New reports prepared for the Senate detail how Russia used social media tactics to target African Americans and suppress Democratic turnout in the 2016 election. The extensive reports show how the Russian government used virtually every social media platform to push for the election of Mr. Trump. The Senate Intelligence Committee, for whom the reports were prepared, have not said if it endorses the findings in the reports. Joining me now from Washington to help us comb through all of this information in these reports is CBS News intelligence reporter Olivia Gazis. Olivia, thank you so much for being with us. First off,
thanks, Sonia.
What did we learn from these reports that we didn't know before?
It's true that we have heard of the Internet Research Agency before, be that through public reporting or through the special counsel's indictment issued in July. It's a Kremlin-linked troll farm that we know engages in influence operations. But what these two reports have really laid bare is that the IRA, as it's known, really engaged in a sophisticated, multi-year and multi-platform effort to undermine America's confidence in its own institutions and democratic processes, and in sort of sowing divisiveness that we knew was widespread in 2015 and onward. We know from these reports that it was not just Facebook and Twitter. These efforts took place on lesser-known companies' platforms like Pinterest, Reddit, and Tumblr. We know, as you mentioned, that specific communities were targeted in an outsized way. The African-American community in particular was really catered to with divisive content and sort of messaging on, if you want to put it, on both sides of the conversation about, Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter. This was really sophisticated messaging on the part of the Russians. And we also learned that these activities not only persist today, but that they're likely to continue and grow even more sophisticated into 2020 and beyond.
I have a question, though, about a particular tactic, because we understand from these reports that one of the goals was to suppress voting, to keep certain groups of people from actually voting. How do you do that? I mean, I can see how you would galvanize people to go to the polls, but how do you keep them from going to the polls?
I mean, one way you would do that via messaging is to sort of make people think that it doesn't matter. You endow them with a sense of cynicism that the outcome is rigged, that the political parties don't care, that your vote is going to be miscounted anyway. And we saw some of those messages employed and sown and disseminated by many of these platforms, which were, again, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever many Americans were sort of consuming their news and cultural content.
And was there also misinformation about the dates in which you could go to the polls and how you registered, things of that nature?
There sure was. Yes, that was pervasive as well.
All right, Olivia, Facebook executive Sheryl Sandberg was asked specifically about the use of micro-targeting to depress voter turnout during a Senate hearing 3 months ago. Let's take a listen to what she said.
Would Facebook's current policies prohibit using micro-targeting to discourage voting?
Senator, we feel very strongly about this. There is a long history in this country of trying to suppress civil rights and voting rights, and that activity has no place on Facebook. Discriminatory advertising has no place on Facebook.
So we heard her say that kind of activity has no place on Facebook, yet it was still there and may still be there. The data from this report came from Facebook. So shouldn't they have known about it? Shouldn't Sheryl Sandberg have known about it at that moment she was being questioned?
It's true. Arguably, they should have. And in fact, both of these reports ding not only Facebook, but Twitter and other companies for not being quite as forthcoming as they arguably should have been with the congressional committees who are taking a long, hard look at this. One report in particular said that both Facebook and Twitter could have handed over more metadata, anonymized comments, viewership data for YouTube in particular, because we literally do not know how many people may have consumed the videos that were being posted, although we know their number. There was just much more that the companies could have offered in terms of data. And in fact, some of the statements that they made during their congressional testimony may have been more evasive or, in fact, misrepresented something that the executives may have known at that point in time. It's a significant criticism of not just Facebook, but other platforms that these two reports made.
So there's a pretty strong suggestion that these social media companies, not just Facebook, were suppressing information. In other words, releasing just the micro amount they had to release to investigators and withholding stuff that was still relevant.
Right. And both companies have responded. They've put out statements saying they've made significant strides in identifying and preventing political interference ahead of the elections. They've said they've cooperated extensively with congressional investigators, and they have. We've come a long way from some of the bad press that was generated by Facebook not really wanting to admit that anything was going on its platforms. Senators on the Intelligence Committee have since lauded both companies for doing more to be more transparent. Twitter, in particular, released large troves of data and set up tools to allow Americans to review what exactly was going on its platform. But it's been something of a learning curve because both companies were really taken to task for what more they could have been doing in this process.
Absolutely, and it would seem rightfully so. Olivia, what do you still want to know about this story? I know personally I'm still curious about how much of this continues, but what are you still looking into?
I agree with you. I think knowing exactly what's going on now that so much is in the open about what the Russian government did in 2015 and 2016 is known, what are they doing now? How have their tactics evolved? I just got off the phone with Renee DiResta, who is one of the researchers with New Knowledge, one of the report writers, one of the principal authors of one of the reports issued today, and she indicated that the next time around, and even today, the Russian government may not resort to simply buying ads or making posts in bad English that are socially divisive. They may take a much more tailored approach to infiltrate political fringe groups. They may, engage in messaging that is even more targeted and effective. And she cautioned that that is not only things that we've seen happening to date, but that could only intensify and become more pervasive as 2020 approaches.
We are certainly not out of the woods. Olivia Gaza, CBS News intelligence reporter, thank you so much for your reporting on this.
Thanks, Tanya.